刚才看了那个珊瑚布，水哗啦哗啦冲下来，飞流直下3000尺，疑是银河落9天。1950年的时候做的。
50年。
这个大概做了70年了。那个时候我们这边的做石头的工艺很好。他做的没有用一点点的那个。
还没修了。
没有修，就这样。
哦，厉害了。So this is an aqueduct, not a bridge, that was built back in the 50s. So it's 70 years old, and it was made really, really well. They haven't done any renovations to it.
流下来，流到这样的茶园，这个茶园的水是最好的。
So the tea at the base of these mountains is really good because when the rain falls, it comes down through all the rocks and the minerals, and all the rocks and the minerals collect in like the tea, the soil down here, and that grows the best type of tea. You can see the waterfall. So that's just the idea of all the water coming down the mountain into the tea gardens.
Hey guys, this is Derek from One River Tea. Today we're going down to Diantou, which is a small village outside of Fuding. And from Diantou, that's our launching point, we're going to get out into Panxi. Panxi is where these tea fields are. They're very near Taimushan, which is the famed area for white tea production. This is Taimushan, the legendary birthplace of white tea. Once in Panxi, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the gardens, the healthiness of the land and the plants, and the production processes, and the general quality of the white tea. So, let's go.
Took me up to the tea fields.
Although there may seem like an excess of tea here, there's actually a new government initiative in Fuding preventing farmers from clearing land to make new tea fields. This will make sure that the mountain's forests are preserved for a lot longer than they would have otherwise.
Right by Taimushan. This road is messed up.
As I came towards the end of the Baimudan harvest, there are not a lot of pickers still in the garden, and so what Cho is doing here is demonstrating the proper pick for a late harvested Baimudan, or white peony.
你很能干的。
Not only am I amazed at Cho's picking abilities, but the garden up here has a lot of weeds and wild flowers mixed among the plants, which for us is always a good sign.
采出来一把一把的，它散开来跟花一样的，叫牡丹花。牡丹，
是牡丹，
对，
一点弯的牡丹。
Cho says that this pick is a little late. It's okay, but it won't fall in any special grade other than white peony. It's not Baimudan Wang, not Baimudan Jiping, just Baimudan. What you can see is the characteristic fuzz, this white down on the leaves, on the underside of the leaves. This is a characteristic of the Dabai Hao varietal, which they exclusively grow in the Fuding region. And this garden is just a very beautiful looking garden. The leaves are very fresh, very clean, very green. It's good to see.
它是以这种方式，不是安溪那一种，全部都是茶园。
对呀。
啊，这个不好。
所以你们有茶园。
Although we see a lot of terrace tea fields here, what he's doing is comparing it to Anxi. In Anxi, all you can see are tea fields, but here there's a nice mix of tea fields and forests.
Forest, tea plot, forest, tea plot. All in the high mountains. So good attempts at diversity. Even for making so much tea, he says he has 300 mu, which is a lot of fields, but if it's interdispersed with forests, it should help minimize the impact.
Earlier, Cho compared the tea fields of Fuding to those of Anxi. In Anxi, they produce Tieguanyin, but the production scale is such that in many places, all you can see in Anxi are bald mountains covered with tea terraces. Over the past few decades, the price commanded by Anxi Tieguanyin has gone down and down because the general quality and perceived quality of the tea has gone down so much. Thus, there's been a lot of pushback from the Fuding government, which is in the same province of Anxi, that of Fujian. The Fuding government is trying very hard to preserve the high quality of their tea and their land. Cho told me about a few of these government initiatives and new legislations going on. as of 2018. Probably the most impressive government initiative is this circular ban on herbicide use in and around tea gardens in Fuding. This is a beautiful document released in 2018 and just goes through all of the ways herbicides are now illegal. To quickly quote a few parts of this circular in a brief translation, in order to ensure the quality and safety of tea products in the city and further enhance the Fuding white tea, this is now part of the tea quality and green development movement in accordance with the food and safety laws of People's Republic of China. Number 1, the use of herbicides in tea gardens in and around tea gardens will be prohibited within the city limits, and non-chemical herbicide techniques such as mechanical and artificial techniques shall be vigorously promoted, and ecological management of the tea plantations shall be implemented. This is an amazing step for getting back to tradition and preventing that influx of chemicals into the land. This document goes on in 7 different parts to mention that the selling of herbicide is prohibited, the buying of herbicides is prohibited, and even calls on farmers to watch their neighbors and call out their neighbors, and gives a phone number to call and report on other people if they're seen using herbicides, because the use of these chemical herbicides only serves to bring down the quality of everybody's Fuding white tea. A few other initiatives are a ban on summer harvests, because summer harvests are effectively a lower quality tea harvest, and summertime is when you need to use more pesticides because there are more insects out, there are more bugs out, and you're doing all of this work of feeding chemicals into the land to create a very low quality tea that sells for lower than the spring and the autumn harvests. And so this is a really good step to prevent the flood of inferior products in the market, which we've seen in Anxi, in Tieguanyin.
So then the tea producing factory is just down here, past that's the old aqueduct we saw earlier. So that's the tea production plant. And then the tea fields are just over that mountain where we just were. Beautiful.
Again, this is late April. This is a late Baimudan harvest. After the tea is picked, it's brought to this staging platform, this huge concrete concourse, and put on these mesh racks. And they're elevated in a way to allow air to circulate through. This way the air comes through, the sun comes down and begins to shrivel them. They lose their water content. Cho said that under ideal conditions like these, the tea is usually sun-dried for 2 days. This sun-drying process can check all the boxes. It wilts the tea, kills the green, and can dry the tea. Sun-dried tea is the most sought-after production of white tea, as it is the most natural and the most difficult to achieve. If the temperatures get too hot while there's still too much water in the leaves, water can be trapped, and this creates a browning effect and also can produce a sour tea. Sometimes though, there's not enough sun, there's not enough space, there's just not enough elements that are working in harmony to create sun-dried tea. And so what white tea producers will do is they'll do this other method of production called weidiao. In this weidiao process, you don't need direct sunlight, it can be done indoors, and this production method yields the second highest quality form of white tea.
That's a lot of tea. I wonder what's behind this big tree.
Oh, so look at that wind. Wow. Okay. And this wind is cold. It's not very hot.
This is what Chiu called the weidiao. This is the withering trough. The air that's being blown through here is just pumped right in from the outside, and this is what they do when the quantity of the tea leaves are too much to dry outside in those evenly spaced rows, or if there's not enough sunlight.
尾条茶就是风放在下面吹，这个就是说量大、数量大的时候，它是这样做。量下面晒不了的，就在这里面围掉。
Okay. So that's kind of what they do when there's not enough space outside or not enough sun outside to really dry.
看不出一挖洞，它就不就。
对的，但是那个温度不高。
它是风，
就是不是温度，
不是温度，
不是
风吹。哦，你把它吹，慢慢吹下来。
So yeah, it's just lukewarm air, just like whatever air is coming in from the outside.
Cho mentioned earlier in his tea house that there are two basic distinctions in white tea production. One being entirely sun-dried tea, the other being this Weidiao tea. The sun-dried tea commands the highest price because it's the most difficult to achieve and yet the most natural. If the temperatures get too hot, if there's too much water in the leaves, it'll result in a more brown, slightly bitter and sour kind of tea, where the Weidiao tea usually is produced universally the same, although it kind of lacks that natural feeling that you would get with the sun-dried tea.
The smell in here is just absolutely beautiful. Again, more sample packages from the big lot. 就是从右边。
这个就快干了，晒2天完以后就成了这样子了。接下来就是我们要做的这一种发酵的工作了。要注意发酵的工作。
Try not to on it.
放在这里面的尾雕房里面晒。这个叫阳光房，上面是透明的。
透明的啊，对。
阳光会射下来，但是雨不会进来。
Okay.
雨水不会进来。
So yeah, so this is where they dry it when there's not enough sunlight or if it's raining. They can put it in here where the sun comes through but the rain doesn't. So it's the same processing as that, yeah.
One of the inherent difficulties with making entirely sun-dried white tea, in opposed to the Weidiao processing, is you're so weather reliant. If it's raining, if it's cloudy, if it's cold, you have to have equipment and facilities that allow you to process it in as close to that natural way as possible.
And again, the smell in this room, it's like, it feels like a greenhouse, like that kind of heat, that kind of like moisture, because all this tea is drying. And so you can imagine the amount of humidity that's in the air right now. It has to get down to like something like 5% moisture content before it's considered dry.
今天这里这个就叫尾雕环。
是好像的。
它就是说我们的热气从这里出来。
Okay.
风，如果风跟热气是从这里出来。
Okay.
出来完了，湿气从这边排出去，这个就叫循环了。
所以就是那个热气的，哇 ，look at all these fans.
这叫干燥室。
Okay. 所以要是那个外面是太冷，没有太阳。
没有太阳下雨的时候，我们就要在这里加工了。
Yeah, so this is what they really do when it's too cold to dry it outside. When there's not enough sun, when it's raining and stuff, they'll add hot air coming out of here, fans blowing it, and they'll just spread all of these racks out in here. And this floor again smells wonderful. It's cedar wood. 就是什么木炭？
下面这些木板。
So this Weidiao Fang, this withering room, is the counterpoint to the Yangguang Fang. So the Yangguang Fang is what they do for the final stages when they're drying out all of the moisture content for totally sun-dried teas. When the teas have been withered in the Weidiao process in the indoor facilities, they're brought in here for the final processing that dries them out entirely.
But as there's enough sun today, boom, it's beautiful. 为什么？因为今天有太阳，为什么你用这个？
哦，这个是已经是干掉了。外面呢，就是说到了这个时候，外面风很大，会把我的茶叶吹走了。所以在这里面就可以避免这个风吹走。
Okay. So this is
它干掉了，很轻的，
对，
就这样，你看嘛，这样，我们的风就噗就飞走。
对 Okay, so they're just storing it in here. They're just storing it in here because it's already dried. And if they keep it outside in the air, the wind will just blow it away.
这里面的风也是很大，因为这里我们有海风一直排出去，风排出去的，这里就空气就流动了。空气这里就很凉快。
很凉快，对。
这个就是说野生的黄金叶。
黄金叶啊。
He called these cakes 夜上黄金叶 tea cakes, which is essentially just wild harvested golden leaves, which is also just a wild harvested 黄片。
野生的黄金叶，黄黄的跟黄澄澄的叫黄金叶。
是黄片的吗？
哎，黄片。
哇，
这是我们的
这么近的。So light， 这是多少克
这个是
？300克呢？
有的是350克，这个因为只有300，
是很近的。
这个有350，这个是300克，因为它比较松，比较轻。
These type of tea cakes, in my opinion, are a little more of a QIU'S because the leaves are so thick and coarse that you can't just gung fu brew them. You can't brew them in a teapot. You really have to boil them to extract the flavors.
这个它是剪的，看看有没有脏的东西挑出来检查。
对，在公说的。
Once the white tea has been fully dried, this is the final measure of quality control. This is when they look through the teas and take out any of the huang pians, any of the old leaves, any of the twigs, or anything else that has found its way into the tea. This is what they also do in the Dansong Mountains in the Mao Cha production called Jia Gong. Alright, thanks for joining us. That was our production and sourcing trip for the Fuding white tea. This is a look at the modern white tea production in Panxi. This is Cho. He's our producer that showed us his farms, his production facilities, and he taught us so much about Fuding white tea. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. We'll be sure to create more of these materials so that you can watch our production and sourcing videos in the future. Also, check out these teas available on the One River Tea website. That's onerivertea.com. And we really hope that you learned a lot about what goes into creating a good cup of white tea. Again, this is Derek from One River Tea, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.